right, so we're here with James from the James Barker Band today, hanging out, and yeah, a lot of fun having you here and shooting the shit over here this afternoon. What's your kind of approach to like amplifiers specifically? Do you have a specific style of amp you like? Like I know a lot of guys lean more towards like Voxy British tones, or they're leaning a little bit more rounder American tones.
I mean, generally because we're doing country stuff, it'll be like the more rounder American stuff. But that being said, like because we do stuff that kind of like leans every direction, like, we're not just straight down the middle like some bands are, like we'll kind of try everything, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's just like figuring out the right one for the, right amp for the application.
Yeah.
So, and you never know what it is. Like it could be the craziest combination of stuff that gives you like a cool tone or whatever it is that kind of sets it apart, which is the cool thing about like, sometimes I feel bad for like, bass or something like that in country music because it's kind of like the tone is the tone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like with guitar, you get to like, in modern country music, that's where the most creative stuff happens.
Well, in modern country, especially in the last like few years, I mean the scope of or the range of tones is unbelievable because you hear people that are doing kind of like the 90s country thing, like the Brent Mason thing.
Totally.
But there's a whole lot of like Metallica with a lap steel.
Yeah, totally.
Recently.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's crazy, obviously being in Nashville, we're tight with everybody, and Hardy's an old friend of mine. And it's crazy here. Like you're like, man, that guy's going like balls to the walls, right?
Oh,
like
dude.
Those are as heavy guitars are getting played on any radio station right now.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I got a call from Derek Wells, and he was working on like the last Hardy record.
Yeah.
And he had been out to an event that we had done and said like, hey, he's like, do you have one of the generators that I could try? Because, I'm getting more calls for like rectifier tones.
Yeah.
And I just want to try something different. And he tried a 120 and right away ordered one from us. And the snowball of like all of a sudden Chris Condon and other dudes in town being like, so that generator thing. And I remember telling the guys here, I'm like, I never thought I would get a call from anyone in Nashville looking for, can you give me the maximum amount of gain?
Yeah, and it is crazy because it does feel like as soon as somebody kind of puts their foot in that door, you know what I mean? Everybody else is like, because we all, like, as guitar players, we want to play the heavy shit. You know what I mean? It's like, obviously, you like to play the clean stuff, but when you get a chance to just, like, fucking slam it, it's like, we all want to do that, and I feel like everyone in Nashville is like, oh, if he's doing it, then we're going to try and do that, too. And it's sick. And also, like, with the Hardy stuff, too, it's like Joey Moy being on it as well, too. It did all the, like, the heavy bands and, like, the early 2000s. It's like, man, they know how to dial that stuff in.
Yeah. So, okay, so talking about kind of, amps and gear, you guys do a lot of fly dates.
Yeah, we do. Too many fly dates.
Yeah.
Like, I wish we were on a bus. But, yeah, because of that, we've obviously done this. And sometimes, like, we'll use backline on certain things and that kind of thing. But you know what it's like. You're going into smaller towns or whatever where you are not dealing with the best backline situation, to say the least. You show up and they've got, like, tubes smashed in it and stuff. And so, yeah, we use a lot of, like, impulse response stuff, and like I'm using a quad Cortex.
Nice.
Is what I'm on, and was on the Kemper for a little bit and made the change over. But it's just like having that consistency when you're on the road is kind of key.
What are your like kind of go-to amp models in the quad Cortex?
I use a matchless for the majority of the stuff on there.
Cool.
Is the one I use, and then I'll just like use the different distortions and stuff like that on it. I don't get too crazy. Some of the stuff, I'll go a little bit crazy with like effects and stuff. Like use some phasers and flangers and that kind of stuff. And the quad. I actually really like the quad Cortex. I feel like you can get really good clean tones out of it. The one thing I will say that it's lacking that I miss from having like a board with pedals are like the timed effects. Aren't as good on that, or like the verbs, like trying to get something like a big lengthy verb. You have to like stack like 2 or 3 with different variations on it to get it to do the thing.
Well, then you're also at the mercy of like front of house and your monitor engineer to be able to actually hear that properly, because I assume there's got to be inconsistency like show to show for you in what you're getting back.
Yeah, 100% there. But the good thing is, I mean, we kind of look at like front of house, you almost have to like treat that as like it's the additional member of the band.
Yep.
And I feel like a lot of times like musicians will just like overlook that and be like, well, you're getting what you're getting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, no, I mean, you got to communicate because you don't know, you've built this beautiful tone and then they put like a high pass on it. You're like, well, what's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're trying to make it fit in the mix, which obviously they got to do, but like if you're doing it, let me know so I won't do it on stage too.
Yeah. Do you travel with your own front of house, or are you using front of house? Okay.
We travel.
Yeah.
I
That'll
feel like
make a lot of sense then.
I feel like that's pretty integral. Like, just because if you have someone, that you don't trust running sound, it's just they can kill a tone, especially when you're running direct. You know what I mean? Like if you've got an amp on stage, then you're like, okay, well at least people are gonna hear the good stuff. You know what I mean? But if you got front of house, man, you can like clip the wings of a tone pretty quick.
Yep.
And I don't know, it's crazy. Like if we do another, next time we're out in a bus, it would be nice to switch back to doing it the real way, you know what I mean? But the other nice thing is like, because I'm singing and playing at the same time, like everything in my quad cortex is triggered from Ableton.
Yep.
Like I've gone pretty far down that rabbit hole.
Yep.
And just having the freedom, that part of it's pretty sick.
Yeah. The first time I saw that being utilized with our amps, I was blown away. And it was Hardy that Justin Luce in Hardy has a couple of 120s. And
I didn't know he was doing that.
Yeah, and I did like, we're not allowed to say rig rundown because that's Premier Guitar's trademark thing. But I went and, we shot a, kind of a run through of his rig and how things work. And he was like, well, the MIDI control on this is awesome. He's like, because it's all programmed and controlled by Ableton. And I was like, oh, shit. I'm like, that's brilliant. Like, because I've only ever really thought about like, well, you get like, an RJM or like a gig rig or something like that and control the amp from the stage. But like, nope, he controls everything.
Dang,
He's like, I don't have to touch my pedal board. He has everything controlled from it, but he still has all of his analog stuff that he likes.
Dang, that's sick. Because I know I've looked into that a little bit, but I haven't gotten that far, like getting the proper like pedal. So is he using some pedals and using the pedal switchers?
Oh yeah,
MIDI pedal switchers. What I wonder what he's using.
He's got. Did he have quad cortex? I think he had quad cortex in his rig, plus a bunch of like he had a separate board. Plus he has two heads, like a main and a backup. So he gets his core drive tones in that from the amps.
Yeah.
And then he gets some other like. I think it was just kind of textured drives from Quad Cortex, or the Quad Cortex might actually be a backup.
I can see that.
And then all of his effects, I can't remember if he had a gig rig or if he had like a Boss CS8 or what he had, but some sort of MIDI controller to control the pedals.
Damn, that's sick.
Yeah, very, very cool setups, and we're starting to see that more and more where you've got people doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And obviously it's way more common with modelers because it's all in one small box.
But the fact that like the technology has moved now where you can use analog gear and control it that way, because I feel like that's kind of the best of both. Like that's kind of the hybrid, best of both worlds where you can get the great like analog sounding tone.
Well, because nobody wants to do this.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Especially now, like, and rock's the same, but in country, like your festival stages are big stages. You've got a strut, you're out there, and if you like you're going out on the strut to rip a solo, and you don't want to have to be back before the bridge comes in or something to smack a pedal, you know what I mean? To have that freedom to do it, and I feel like, we played a bunch of shows with Keith Urban, like, whatever it was when we were first starting out, and you've got a guy backstage that's just back there switching pedals, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's like, we don't all have the luxury of having someone backstage who's just switching pedals for us, right?
Yep.
And so, that's pretty sick, honestly. Like, I feel like that's probably what I'm gonna do next time we go out, like just to do that, because you know how it is. Like I feel like as guitar players, you're just always chasing that tone, and even though it'll sound incredible, like oh man, it sounded sick, like in your head, you're like, could have been a little better,
The tone chasing thing is always interesting because I feel like we all get to a point where we get like the magical amp, or like a combination of the magical amp, magical guitar, and pedals, and we're like, that's it, I've got it. And 3 months later,
the time goes
hear
by.
anything else, and you're like, oh, I don't have it. It's over there. Let me go get that stuff. And we are never, ever satisfied, which is, good for us as a company that makes gear, that people are never satisfied with their tone, and they're always kind of chasing something different. But yeah, so it just causes your board or your gear collection to evolve and your stage setup to evolve.
Yeah, and music changes too, right? Like what's relevant or what other people are doing. Like someone does a new thing you haven't heard or uses a tone you haven't heard, and you're like, oh damn, like you said, like it changes your perception of what is good.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I don't know, you guys do a good job of that too with like updating and trying different stuff where it's like, you know, like I feel like all guitar players, you just constantly trying different shit.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And one thing will work for one person doesn't work for another. And it's just about trying the shit that works for you.
Well, I mean, even for like Dan, our designer, I mean, it's no different than, you know, players or like any musician or almost anything in life. I mean, you continually learn. Like, it's not like,
Right.
like you guys wrote a hit song. That's not it. You're not done, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like you're like, okay, well, Chills was a big hit, so let me rewrite Chills.
No, it's
and
like
the new version of it. It's
the opposite.
Yep.
Really, it's like, well, how do we not do that again? How do we still like channel whatever it was that made that special?
Yep.
You know, on like a macro level, but do something totally different.
Yep.
Right.
And with gear, like, it seems weird because I don't think a lot of people think about this, but the people who design gear do kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Where they're like, well, yeah, I did that, but since I, Dan designed the generator back in like 2012, right? Well, what he's learned since 2012 till now as a designer,
Yeah.
I mean, you can implement new things, no different than when you start out playing guitar versus 10 years later.
Yeah.
What's in your toolbox is very, very different.
Yeah, that's so cool. Like, and it is one of those things where you look back on maybe the first version of it and you're like, oh damn, this like compared to what we're doing now sucks compared to this. But that's just like, I forget what the exact quote is, but it's like when you see your earliest work, you should be almost embarrassed at how bad, but that's just a sign that you've grown, you know what I mean? And it also is easy sometimes in like this industry where like you almost like get too complicated with it. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this, but like you go so far down a rabbit hole that you're almost like evolved to the next stage of where the majority of consumers are a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And you're always kind of trying to keep that, be like, don't go too far down this like rabbit hole that it's not accessible.
I find that with a lot of the time with players, especially players that get into like the modern metal thing.
Yes, totally.
Where, like to them, like a great example is the difference between how I play and the difference how Sam plays.
Right.
So when Sam's testing stuff out, what he's playing versus when I'm testing stuff out are night and day different because Sam does not care about just hearing big open chords anymore.
Right.
Right? He's going to
moved
write
past
stuff.
that.
He's going to write stuff that's way more melodic, right? And that has like this, very distinct kind of flow. A lot of the time it's like really percussive sounding stuff.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
And when I sit down, I'm like, I just want to hear how a big E chord,
How heavy it sounds,
I'm like,
yeah.
and I want to hear like what's the chime on it? Like what is the amp doing? And that's it. That's all from my hands, that's all I want to be able to hear. But I think it's a testament to, guys when they get as good as them, they get bored with like what I would be like, I'm happy with this. They're completely bored with that.
Yeah, it's like too like basic or something like that. It's like when you like develop like a taste for a certain spice or something like that. You know what I mean? Like when you're a kid, you just want sugar and salt. You know what I mean? When you get a little older, you know that there's more nuance to it.
Yeah, when I was young, I thought pizza pops were good.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes still.
Yeah. So, well, dude, thanks for hanging out and chatting gear with us.
Oh, thanks, dude.
Yeah,
This is so sick. We love stopping by here. You guys got the dopest shit. So.
Dude, anytime you're in town, please come by.
Hell yeah, thanks, dude.
Awesome.